Minister Goyal, the India-UK FTA was concluded last month. What are the next steps for implementation, and how soon can businesses in India expect to see tangible benefits?
The legal scrubbing is currently underway, and after we've formally signed the documents, India of course has a much shorter process, but UK has a much longer process to ratify it or approve it. Once the UK process is complete and we announce the agreement has entered into force, we'll start getting the benefits for both sides, business persons. However, I think the time is now right for businesses on both sides to start engaging with each other, start planning for the future, start building up collaborations, joint ventures, trading relationships, investment partnerships. So I think it's the time of the agreement that is absolutely appropriate for it to be propagated to businesses on both sides, so that it creates jobs, it creates business opportunities, both for UK and India.
And turning to the US, you've made repeat visits to Washington, where President Trump has called India a serial abuser of tariffs. Is that fair? Are you learning to adapt to a more mercantile United States?
Well, we don't comment on what other leaders say, but clearly India is a country that large parts of the world wants to do business with, and it's going to be the biggest opportunity over the next 20, 30 years in terms of economic growth, in terms of potential for business, and I think countries across the world are now looking up to work with India to develop friendly relations with India.
You have very high tariffs. According to WTO data, your average tariff is 12%. How do you justify such high?
I think these average tariffs are a misnomer. The real figure to be seen is the applied tariff. And the applied tariff in most cases is in a low single digit. So while the tariff for WTO purposes, they look at tariff on 12,000 lines. No countries trade with each other on 12,000 lines. Nobody has a finger in the pie for every product and every service in the world.
But is there scope to grow the lines of trade if you adjust those tariffs?
That's what happens when you do bilateral free trade agreements. Tariffs often are kept high to also safeguard against countries which have unfair trading practices, against countries which do predatory pricing, against countries where you don't get equal and fair opportunity to do business. So tariffs have a purpose, and now increasingly other parts of the world are recognizing that India did the right thing and are in some sense emulating what we did.
Turning to China now, your trade deficit with China is closing in on $100 billion. How concerned are you about consumer goods dumping from China?
Oh, we are very concerned. We are taking appropriate action wherever we find any sort of dumping. And it's unfortunate that about 20 years ago, India only had a small trade deficit with China of about $1.5 billion or $2 billion until 2004. Around 20 years ago, unfortunately, India opened the floodgates to imports from China, and in a 10-year period from 2004 to 2014, our trade deficit with China grew by 2,500%. It became 26 times what it was. And over the last 10 years, we've been able to contain that crazy growth very significantly. And as we promote manufacturing in India, as we enter into bilateral agreements with other parts of the world, we are hoping that we'll expand trade and economic activity with the developed world and bring some more quality standards in India so that substandard goods at predatory pricing do not hurt the Indian economy.
Looking now at the terrible tragedy of the Air India crash this month, what steps is your government taking to improve aviation safety?
Well, it's been a very sad tragedy. I pay my condolences to all the families who lost their near and dear ones, including the many British families affected. Of course, the investigation into the causes of the accident is underway. We have also set up a high-powered committee to examine ways and protocols for the future to prevent any occurrence of such a tragedy. And I do believe that it will have to be a concerted effort between the manufacturing companies and all the user airlines to learn from such tragedies and create the right framework to avoid any such recurrence.
Mr. Goyal for BBC News, thank you so much for your time.